following program is brought to you by your friends at Podcast One.
New York, you know you're number one. So this holiday season, give your loved ones the best. Verizon Unlimited with 4 lines for $40 per line per month. When you've got New York's number one network, there's nothing you can't do. Share unlimited photos and videos, send unlimited texts, and make unlimited calls with mobile hotspot and 4G LTE data in all 5 boroughs. Enjoy the best unlimited for a great price, because this first-class city doesn't do second-rate gifts. New York, give your friends and family the best. Verizon Unlimited.
Welcome to RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Weekly winners from his Wiseguy Roundtable. Broadcasting from the pregame.com studios in Las Vegas. Here is RJ Bell.
National Football League Week 16 edition with my Wiseguy Roundtable. To my right, the Bettor, Steve Fezzik. In front of me, a little to my left, Matty Holt, the bookmaker. I'm RJ Bell. Boys, this is the penultimate week of NFL regular season action, and I've never seen so many pros versus Joes games. We got like 6 of them, and one of them is on a best bet of one of the boys, and one of them is on a triple like. I mean, it is more the pros going one way and the Joes going the other than I've ever seen. And quite frankly, I think that offers a big opportunity, because when the pros go one way and the Joes go the other, if you like the pro side, usually you get more value on the line, because the Joes are helping tug that line towards them. Not all the way towards them, maybe, but it's a resistance of that sharp money and the line move, which is a good thing if you like to follow the sharp money. First, though, public pounder game. We got the Patriots hosting the Bills. Pats at home, favored by 12. And as we said with the public pounder, up to 90% of the money on the Patriots, just like you would expect. We're going to start with Matty Holt here. Matty, lean or like?
I lean Buffalo, and there's an old adage in this spot: always play against the team coming off their biggest game of the year, especially if their biggest performance of the year is coming in that biggest game of the year. And that's the spot we're in here with the New England Patriots. They're coming off their biggest win over Buffalo for the number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs on the line. And now they're laying double digits, almost 13 points to their arch rival, the Buffalo Bills, who have plenty of motivation in this game after the Gronkowski late hit and suspension. So I think there's a lot of reasons to like Buffalo in this game. And at 12.5, 13, I'm probably going to lean that way.
But as of now, and this is something we've started doing on the college Dream Preview, and guys, if you are betting the bowls, if you don't typically listen to the college Dream Preview, we just put up the middle 15 games, and this goes all the way to the 28th of December. A lot of good games, a lot of good analysis. Fast sat in on that for sure. But, you know, one of the things that we've been doing there is if you don't like a game, we want to hear the reason. So you lean that way. You made some cases for the Bills. What keeps you off it at the current number?
The history of the Patriots. I don't want to buck the Patriots. First of all, I'm a Patriots fan. So for everyone who knows me, I'm from New England, grew up there my whole life. I don't want to bet against the Patriots, period. And I'm always hesitant to take division opponents against the Patriots, except the New York Jets, who have had much better history against the Patriots than most of the other teams in the division. For that reason, I may stay away, but it certainly would lean Buffalo.
And I think it's that simple. And I tweeted this out on Sunday. But Fez, you're going to love this. This is the top 10 teams in the Marvin, or as you say, Marvis Lewis area.
Marvelous.
I think because you got his name wrong, do you think it's possible? I'm not saying it's likely. Is it possible that the decision makers with the Bengals listen to the Dream Preview and they said, if Fezzik can't even get this guy's name right, how in the heck is he our coach? And then boom.
Boom. And I'm from the Cincinnati area.
I mean, do you think that there's any chance of that?
Followed the Bengals for 15 years. It's time for him to go.
Because you couldn't get his name right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marvis. All right. So in the Marvis Lewis era, here are the best ATS teams. So 2003 onward. And I'm going to go in reverse order, 10, countdown, Letterman style. Number 10, the Bengals. Now, this is pretty amazing, 51.5%. So if, by definition, the spread is expectation, right? And hey, guys, by the way, you're all writing this down. It's on my Twitter. So at RJ, I don't know if you guys know about this, but it's at RJ in Vegas. So here's the list. Bengals, 51.5%. Giants, 51.6%. Seahawks, 51.8%. Steelers, 52.8%. So Steelers, number 7. Saints, 53.1%. So actually, if you start with Pittsburgh, there's 7 teams, if you had bet them blind, of the 32 that you would have made money with, right? 52.4%, break even. Steelers, 52.8%, right? So you make a little bit of money.
When did we start rounding? I thought we always just said 52.38%.
I do. I try.
Oh.
I'm throwing so many numbers out there. Were you impressed by the 0.38?
Well, no, I've always known the 52.38. Everyone in our industry.
Hey, listen,
knows
you
that.
know it better. You're the Vig.
Yeah.
I mean, what the heck? You love it.
Yeah.
You should have wouldn't it be funny if we went to
I'm
the
going
gym?
to make a T-shirt right now that says 52.38.
Wouldn't it be great if we went to the gym and Matty you get a little glance at his upper hip and he's got 52.38 tattooed.
We could talk about how you have to hit 11 divided by 21 to break even, but the bookie only holds 1 divided by 22. Seems counterintuitive.
All right, continuing on. I won't edit that out though. Is Chargers 53.3, Vikings 53.8, Colts 54.7, Packers 55.7. All right, so number 2, 55.7. Number 1, the Patriots, 60.0. The Pats have covered 60% of games. This is before, I guess, they pushed against Pittsburgh. I guess if you look at the close, they covered again, right? Is 50 or 60% since 2003. That's almost unfathomable. Matty, you know this as well as anyone. There's not one batter that's played even half as many games in the NFL as the Pats have played that's hit 60% over that time in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, nobody
absolutely
felt
not.
it.
You're saying, right?
Yeah, nobody felt it more than us last year as bookmakers, as everyone was betting against Frisco, against Cleveland, and on Dallas and on New England. And we went through a really tough stretch where that whole foursome went 4 for 4, I think 9 consecutive weeks.
But anyone can even though last year, by some accounts, and it matters how you look at it, was the best point spread season ever for any team, was the Pats. But if you're looking at it like 14, 15 years, to hit 60% is almost especially considering that they were winning teams during those years in a way they have a premium on them, right? It's hard enough to win with a premium. What do you think of that, Fez?
Absolutely incredible. You'd think that's an impossible stat. One thing that stood out to me, RJ, on that top 10 list, they all had stable quarterbacks. I'm going to count Andy Dalton as a pretty good quarterback. And then you got the Minnesota Vikings, and I think the Vikings are just such an under-the-radar market that they become an undervalued commodity.
Now think about this. If we think about it, and this will be the last point on this, but this makes it even more fascinating. If we think about it from the delta from break even, all right, so how much above break even is the team? The number 2 team, the Packers, is 3.3% above break even, 55.7, 3.3 above 52.4 in this case. The Patriots are 7.6 points above break even, or percentage win above break even. Thus, they are more than double over break even than the second best team in the league.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And you could make 14% on a weekly basis, just taking your bankroll. You have to replenish it and betting on the Patriots each and every week. The ROI is 14%. That's incredible.
But as they say with the mutual funds, right? Past performance. But I think in general, maybe just saying I don't bet against the Pats, at least with Brady Belichick, I'm not sure that's a bad idea. So the fact that you don't like their opponent, probably not a bad idea. All right, Faz, lean or like on this game?
I lean to Buffalo. All about energy, in my opinion. You've got New England. They played 5 of 6 games on the road. But what happens is now they're home and everyone forgets about that. Well, that still has some lingering impact on you to have all those road trips. Buffalo played 3 consecutive home games, and now they get to play New England. So the road team is the far fresher team here. So I'm not making it a like because I hate betting against the Patriots, even though I do think Brady only played 12 games last year. He's had to play 16. This is his 15th game. this year during the regular season. I think it's going to catch up to them potentially in the playoffs.
And I think that's a great point because they always talk about on the field that NFL players are almost always going to play 100% because if not, they're going to get injured. Now, I think there's spots where, or at least they increase the chance of injury. I think there's spots where they might not put their nose in a certain spot if the game's out of hand because it's like, hey, this is a high risk kind of diving tackle. Maybe I'm not going to do that. But they're playing hard. But, Mike Lombardi's talked about this. It's the preparation where they suffer if there's lack of motivation. It's Tuesday night. Do you keep watching, a Netflix show or do you watch a little bit of tape, right? Now you're thinking they're making millions of bucks, but if you're 3-12, what do you do? Maybe you watch the Netflix show.
Watch Stranger Things season 2.
So to me, the fact the Pats had let's be candid, one of the most challenging road streaks where they played 5 out of 6 road games, right? And the last 2 were at Miami and they got embarrassed, and then a war against the Steelers. And then at the end of the game, they spent a lot of energy. I mean, is this a situation Tuesday, Wednesday this week? They're a little tired. Hey, they're double-digit favorites. I think on Sunday they'll be fine, but maybe the prep drops off just a little bit.
I think it has to, especially all they got to do is win. They're 12.5-point favorite. One thing I wanted to make a point about, you talk about 60% Patriots in the Marvin Lewis era. I'm going to go one better. I'm going to talk 63%, RJ. We need to talk about this week. Since week 7 in the NFL, favorites are 79, 46, and 7 against the spread. Why do we have a record number of pros versus Joes this week? Because the Joes have been cashing since week 7, betting the favorites, and that's going to increase the point spreads. The odds makers are getting buried. They've got to bring it up to get balanced action.
So, Matty, you're as qualified as anyone in the world to talk about this. Here's my rationale on why when there's favorites winning that they get bet more the next week. The one is obvious. There's been affirmation. You did something. You go to a bar in a certain shirt. You're single. You get lucky. Next time you're going to the bar, you might wear the same shirt, right? Makes sense. Number 2, they got more money in their pocket. I mean, it's not like there's these theoretical bankrolls. These recreational bettors, if they win a bunch, they're more inclined to bet. More games, more per game. If they lose, less inclined. Agree with those 2? Any other reasons?
I do agree to a certain extent, especially the affirmation part of it. The tourist people, their bankrolls tend to fluctuate a lot more anyway because they're doing other things with it. They tend not to have dedicated bankrolls towards sports betting, but the affirmation is the big part of it. And what we saw last week, and this is what hurt last year too, is the parlays, especially these big money line parlays. We had 3 separate $50,000 money line parlays that last week were Saints, some combination of Saints, Ravens, Vikings, all those big favorites, and they all got home, of course. You just need one of those as a bookmaker to win to really kind of kill the whole day and kill all those, but they've been winning lately. I mean, not one underdog won outright last week, so we're going to see that big, look, if I just take the big 4 favorites, parlay them in a big money line parlay, how can that lose? And that's been the affirmation that we've seen the last couple of weeks.
Now, I think it was a little tortured when they were trying to say, all the favorites covered or all the favorites won last week,
but they did.
Well, I guess a
couple of pick'ems.
Yeah, and the one pick'em, and again, if you want to throw out the pick'em, I'm fine with that, right? If you want to assume the pick'em, some people were assuming the pick'em, like, hey, the pick'em was a winner, so someone had to win that game. But I also thought, and I'm having a little block in this game. There was the one game when it was the team. It was the Rams, right? I'm thinking, Seattle, a vast majority of the money taken on that game had Seattle as the small favorite in that game, right?
Agreed.
And then at what point did it get to pick them?
On Sunday morning, the last hour, it was pick at the sharp books, and I still think that the Rams were you could still get +1 at the Vegas books.
But you're saying literally, and it was obviously it was a late starting game, or it was a 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern game, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you're saying even on Sunday, 12 of the 13 hours or whatever before kickoff, the one team was favored.
Yes.
Now, or in this case, the Seahawks. Does that sound right to you, Matty?
Yeah, I don't know that we were in particularly, but yeah, like the vast majority of the week, Seattle was a 1.5 1 to 1.5 point favorite.
And I get it, because to be candid, the way this industry has always done it is they've said the closing line used to be the closing Stardust line or whatever way back when. To me, I think that's stupid. And it's something I'm thinking of doing is we've got enough computer data. If you go to the Game Center and just go to pregame.com and click Game Center and then click the consensus tab, you can see the bets are streaming in. And it's a situation where we could actually say, and you know, I don't want to get into this because we have a big crowd. I'm going to tease it, and we'll get into it maybe one of the playoff weeks when we have a little bit more time. But I'm just going to tease it. I love the idea is what was the majority of the money bet at? And if you actually just have the cash numbers, which we do, only place in the world, they're free out there in real time up at pregame.com. If you have the cash numbers and you know the correspond or the associated line at each number, you can just do math and say, okay, what was, you know, for example, if half the money was bet at 3 and half the money was bet at 3.5, then the line in that case would be 3.25. Now, obviously, we couldn't have a closing line of 3.25, so we would just round it, right, and figure a way to round it. But to me, wouldn't that be so much more telling than a line is, 1.5 all week and 90% of the money is at 1, let's say, and then at the last minute, it ticks to pick, and now all of a sudden it's going to get graded at pick, though less than 10% of people bet it at pick?
Sure. I mean, that's fair enough. Although, look, it took money to drive it to pick. So at the end of the day, that game also ended up being
But that money wasn't bet at pick. The money was bet at,
Sure.
plus one in this case, right?
Sure.
So, and again, for me, someone who obsesses over trends and win-loss records, having that right close, I think, has some real value.
Yeah, like you could grade the Steelers as being a loss as a dog against the spread, and same with Oakland, because those games closed 2.5, but they were 3 for 98% of the week.
Yeah, I agree. So where do you close? I think but again, it also goes in. I don't care what percentage of the week it's been. I care about when the money's bet, because if 90% of the money's bet on game day,
yeah, because you have lower limits on Monday or Tuesday anyway.
Exactly.
So what does time matter?
So to me, I care about when the money was bet. And if you have that data, that's interesting, I think. All right, guys, great stuff. We've got the Seahawks. Oh, wait a minute. We're not even starting slow here. We're starting fast. It's crossfire time. Second game. We've got the Seahawks. We got the Cowboys. Fezzik, we're going to let you go first. Who do you like?
I like Dallas here, and it's a fade of the Seattle Seahawks. It worked out well last week. May as well do it again. I really think that the Seattle Legion of Boom is absolutely no more. We talked about how their entire secondary, this is old news, is injured and out. And Averill was a key injury on defense as well. But now linebacker cluster injuries. I had read that Bobby Wagner, who's a great linebacker, had not missed a tackle all year long. And then I'm watching in the very first quarter, here comes Gurley, gives him a juke, goes right past him. He gets an arm on him, doesn't come close to stopping him. Completely ineffective. And now the Seattle locker room, the defense, they're all fighting with each other. They are not used to this. Remember, Seattle gels in December, and Seattle does well at home. Well, they just laid a complete egg. The 12th man, very disappointed. That's their best role, being at home. Now they're in their bad role, going on the road. I know Dallas has a minimum home field advantage, but they're two teams going in opposite directions. And I really love taking a team that's been a Super Bowl champ, a Super Bowl contender for years, and all of a sudden they're staring at the abyss, and now they've fallen into the abyss. They know they're not making the playoffs. Dallas is the opposite. Although they feel it's very unlikely, they've got their mojo back. They've got Elliott back. They've got all their guys who were injured early in the year back, playing at a higher level. My power ratings do not support this play, but I feel that the attitude of the Cowboys is thumbs up, and Seattle infighting, I will take the Cowboys.
This line opened -2.5 with extra juice on the favor, up to 5. So I think you're on a very public handicap here, I think, Fez. Matty Holt, you like Seattle.
There's certain games at the end of the year here where I like to get away from I like this team, and this team doesn't like each other anymore.
Is that like a girly voice?
And I like to get down into the numbers of these two teams, and let's say they're both 8-6. They're both in the same exact situation. They're both in must-wins. Let's not get into the I like this team, I don't like that team, this guy doesn't like this guy. These two teams both average 5.4 yards per play on offense this year, tied for 14th in the National Football League. Dallas Cowboys, 5.2 yards per play at home this year, Seattle Seahawks on the road, even better, 5.3 yards per play on defense. And as bad as that game was last week for the Seattle Seahawks, their defense on the road this year, 4.9 yards per play allowed. Just the stats say Seattle's actually a tick better than Dallas in this spot, and I'm catching 5 points. Everyone loved the Seahawks last week before the Rams game. Oh, their defense is hurt, but their offense is still playing great. One bad game doesn't mean the end of the season. I'm going to go ahead and take the 5 points in what on paper looks like a pick'em game.
Okay, so first thing, I don't think we should be too macho on the Dream Preview since Blossom introduces our best bets. So when he's doing the Nancy Pansy voice, might be a bit much. Fez, you think he was
attacked? We can't get into the I like this team. This team doesn't like each other. I mean, come on. We did that with the Raiders.
Yeah, Seattle's not the team they were earlier in the year. Yeah, I talked about this last.
That actually wasn't bad.
Yeah, I talked about this last week. I talked about shutting down Jacksonville. Yeah, when we had a healthy linebacker, Wagner.
A little bit.
Wagner
just sprinkle it.
Gave up nothing in the first half. No touchdowns. Second half got torched by the Jaguars and Blake Bortles when Wagner got injured. Well, got torched by the Rams, and Matty said it best. Even the offense got sacked 7 times. That offense that was gelling, and Russell Wilson was suddenly supposed to be so much better. Chinks in the armor on the offense. I grant you, over the course of the season, these have been 2 equal teams. They most certainly are not close to equal right now.
So I got a couple questions. Obviously, you got to account for injuries, right?
Sure, of course.
So how do you, when you look at your yards per play and all that, how do you account for
Seattle's injuries this week are actually better than they have been in 3 weeks. So we can't.
But they're not as good. But they're not as healthy as they were week 8.
Look, you made the case for Seattle last week against the Rams, who's a better team than the Dallas Cowboys, and people made a case for Seattle the week before. Okay, so maybe Seattle's laid eggs. But if the Seattle defense is truly improved since they got the new offensive lineman and they're truly playing better, then why are we suddenly giving up on them after one bad game? The stats still say that the offense is performing despite last week's horrid performance.
So here's my question. By the way, you guys both, Fez, I beat Fez so bad in Crossfire last week that when Seattle got blown out, I had Seattle and he had the Rams in that. I got probably a dozen tweets like, you owe him. It's almost like Duvall and Godfather 2. You owe him an apology, Senator, an apology. And
is it coming?
No.
Oh.
God, no. Because this is the thing. We have passion. It's take no prisoner. If someone's saying something you disagree with, you pound your fist, baby.
But many times at this time of year, we start getting into the motivation.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But I think motivation this time of year is a huge factor.
Sure. So so doesn't the public, and so don't the odds makers who count that into effect. To your point, this line opened, what 2.5? How do you think we make opening numbers?
Matty, those are two different conversations. One is, you're right, there is a emotional element or motivational element to this handicap, but even when you account for that, this line moves too much.
Is there any value in this line at 5? Come on.
No, that's a different conversation. Hold on a second, Fez, because I want to drill this down. In general, if both teams were equally motivated with the current health of the teams accounted for, what should the line be in this game, Matty, in your mind?
3.
All right. Now, how much do you account? So you actually think Dallas is a little better? Because I agree with Fez. Dallas' home field's 2.5 at best.
Sure, let's call them close to pick them, but we don't make lines 2.75.
No, I understand.
3 is a very public number in the NFL. Okay. It's easy to get on or off. You open 3.
So how many points do you give, if any, to the motivational detriment or negative element?
I don't understand any motivational detriment this week. I disagree with that comment.
You agree in general that motivation can matter, especially late in the year, but not in this game.
Yeah, I don't know what the motivational detriment is. They're both 8-6 in a must-win game. Please explain to me the motivational detriment.
What is Seattle's playoff chances, Fast?
About 5%. They got to win their last 2 games, and they need 2 losses, I believe, either from Carolina or from Atlanta.
So one of those 2 have to go 0-2, and Seattle has to go 2-0.
It might be that Atlanta has to go 0-2, but I don't know who has the tiebreak, Carolina versus Seattle. I didn't look it up.
Do you agree Seattle's chances are less than 10% to make the playoffs?
Yeah, about that. They're probably around that, 10% or less.
So you don't think a team that's been in the Super Bowl multiple times that has a long shot chance, Larry Bird missing a free throw or less chance of making the playoffs that there might be a chance of just chucking
What is Dallas's chances of making the playoffs? And why is Dallas, who has a very similar path, suddenly have a huge motivational edge?
You don't think
I
Zeke,
don't
you don't think
understand.
Zeke coming back helps them? Like they've
Sure,
been waiting
okay.
for this?
So what is the Zeke?
I'm saying emotionally.
Zeke's a locker room guy now?
No, but I'm saying it's
Zeke
like,
is a locker room uplifter now.
No, no, no,
Ezekiel
no.
Elliott.
No, I think you misunderstood. What I meant is they've been waiting. You know how you're at a party, sometimes it's a little boring and there's someone coming and it's like, oh, when's Fred coming? And finally Fred walks in and says, Fred's here, right? Now maybe Fred's going to make the party more fun or not, but you know that emotion, right?
Sure.
I think they've been waiting on Zeke.
And that Zeke coming back to the locker room effect is worth 2 points in this game.
How many points is it worth? No, I'm saying in aggregate, the motivational edge relative to Seattle that Dallas has, how much do you value it at, Fez?
Well, I'd say it's a combination. Zeke coming back is one motivational edge. That's worth the point. He himself is worth the point. And I think that
On the field.
And I think this whole problem, all these problems Seattle's had, and they know it's all over, I think is worth about 1.5 points of a downgrade. I don't think I downgrade Seattle enough, frankly.
I'll be honest, and let's wrap this. This was great because the listener knows which side they like based on one question. And that question is, do you believe Dallas has a significant motivation? If you edge, if you do, then this line probably makes a little bit of sense. If you don't, there's huge value on it.
2.5, 3, I get it.
Yeah.
Motivational edge to Dallas at 5 plus. Whoa.
Let the listener decide.
And to me, that's what's fascinating is I really, really like it when we can understand why two experts disagree.
Sure.
Because it lets the listener, or I like to know when the experts disagree with the public, why they do, right? Because then you can zero in on those differentiating factors.
And I think I almost always fall on the side of value.
He says humbly.
And I almost always fall on the side of value also.
All right. It's perceived value is the trick here. All right. Let's see what the smart money says. CG Technology reports 85% of the account money is on Dallas. Now, this is interesting. At what number? Right? Because that's the thing, because his lines move significantly.
Yeah, because if you're as sharp, you could have even laid 3 on Dallas, not even liking it at all, and saying, just buy it all up and dump it back at a profitable price.
You know who you sound like right now, Fez? Gordon Gekko.
Blue Horseshoe?
Blue Horseshoe loves Anacott Steel.
That's Fez's favorite. That's his favorite. Next game, we've got a total play from Fez. It's the Raiders. It's the Eagles. Let's start on the side, though. Eagles at home, favored by 9. Matty, lean or like?
I lean Oakland here. I know that they didn't have the best performance last week result-wise, but actually I thought they played a good football game. I thought the stats leaned toward Oakland last week, and they played to the statistics, a low-scoring, tough-fought game, almost got there. The Amari Cooper and offensive injuries have played a deficit to this Oakland offense. But I thought you saw some holes in a Philadelphia team. When you talk about motivation concerns, I think they fall on Philly here is what do you do when your star quarterback goes out, a.k.a. Oakland last year with Derek Carr, Philly this year with Carson Wentz? How hard is it to get up for games when you no longer feel like, or do you feel like you have a shot at winning the Super Bowl?
They're the 4th favorite to win the Super Bowl.
Sure. I mean, look, Oakland was awesome too last year, and they looked anemic in the playoffs without Derek Carr. Don't get me wrong, Nick Foles is a lot better than any backup than most of these backups in the league. But I just wonder, when you talk about motivation, it has to be some type of motivational detriment to Philly here, right?
Can you believe the guy going, how does his tummy feel? Is he motivated?
Yeah,
and now he's saying the 4th favorite isn't motivated.
If we're going to call every other team
seed.
I think after they go out and play like 3 lousy games in a row, there might be a motivation issue. If anything, I'd say the first game after their quarterback went down is they're probably their maximum motivation time where they really should have showed up.
Which they
did
on the
show up,
scoreboard.
yeah.
But let's dig. So why don't we do this? Because, Fez, I think in your total handicap, we're going to get a lot of the stuff in the game I want to get to. So why don't you go there first?
Okay, well, I'm very worried about Oakland and whether they're going to score points. And the reason being both their wide receivers are questionable. Cooper with a concussion, Crabtree with an ankle.
We're taping Wednesday late afternoon in Las Vegas.
Further, it's Christmas night. Can Oakland, after having their dream crushed completely, they went 12-4 last year. No playoffs for them this year. Do they?
So
really
are they mathematically eliminated?
Haven't looked it up.
All right. So Dallas has less than a 10% chance, but they're motivated. But Oakland may or may not have a chance at the playoffs, but we know their dream has been
They're
crushed.
like 0.5%. They're like 2 teams have to tie.
I thought you didn't look it up.
I didn't look it up because it's so mathematically impossible.
But you're saying it's like less than 2%.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And because of that, and it being Christmas night,
By the way, Maddie's checking his
you double check me. RJ's like always like, Fez, you got to look that up before you come on in.
Exactly.
So I think it could be a no-show by the Oakland offense here. And I'm worried that it's going to be a no-show because the Eagle defense got torched by Eli Manning, and it's been a pretty darn good defense all year long, and they give up almost 500 yards to the Giants. So I think Oakland could absolutely get shut down. Also, team in California going to 30 degrees, chance of light snow showers. Don't need any part of Oakland's offense in my bet. That's primarily why I'm looking under the total.
And what's the total?
Total is 48 points.
Okay, so one of the reasons my gut likes the under here is because there were so many points in the Eagles game last week. But actually, if you look into the box score, meaning the public's going to think, oh, look, Foles, they can still score like crazy. If you look into the box score, though, you thought that was, and I think any reasonable person, deceiving final score.
It was deceiving because the Giants should have gotten more points. The Giants got a punt blocked, they got a field goal blocked, an extra point blocked, and even at the very end, they were in the red zone throwing for the winning touchdown, and there could have been pass interference called in the end zone. So the Eagle defense played arguably one of their worst games of the year.
I think this is such a key point, is the idea that, oh, look, the Eagles won, no problem. And look, it doesn't look like it was the offense's problem. I mean, that's going to be the takeaway from a majority of people. And I think it's fair to say, now, how would you grade? Has Foles been upgraded? And we'll go around the horn and start with Matty. Has Foles been upgraded or downgraded in your mind off of last week's performance, or flat?
Flat for me.
Flat. I was going to slightly downgrade him, but he threw 4 touchdown passes. I got to keep him where I had him.
Okay, but I think the average fan has upgraded him.
Probably.
Just off the scoreboard.
Unless they watched the game, because then they would have saw all the crazy things that happened.
Yeah, but even then, I think they disconnect from that and just see this, and then they see the score throughout the week.
Could be.
So I like that in general. I also got a feeling that Oakland. Did you get the playoff information for the Raiders?
Yeah, the Raiders have a chance because they own the tiebreaker with Miami, but they do need a lot to happen. They're currently in 9th in the AFC.
And is there any percentage estimate projection?
No, it doesn't give that, unfortunately.
Frankly, I'm shocked Miami hasn't been eliminated also.
All right. So my last question is this. Handicapping 101 says, and either you guys jump in, that when in football and basketball, when motivation is a question mark or less than it should be, that the defense tends to get hurt more than the offense. And what you see in the NBA, especially, is those last 2 or 3 games of the year, you see the totals go through the roof because no one's playing defense. Do you agree in general that's the case in football? And why wouldn't that be the case in this game for the Raiders if you're right about the motivation?
I agree in general. And my concern here is because the wide receivers are both injured, I think they might not play because they're essentially out of the playoffs.
All right. So what you're saying is the fact that this game has questionable stakes for the Raiders might make them make a business decision with their wide receivers.
Exactly. And the gut,
but wouldn't the same? Oh, go ahead.
And the gut punch loss last week, which essentially ruined any realistic chances, was on the offense. It was Carr that fumbled the ball as they were going in for the winning touchdown against the Cowboys. I see a very lacking in motivation offense off of that loss. You could blame it on the offense.
But that's the weird thing. You can always, to me, with motivation, I think it's so important to have a very clear idea of at least what you believe. You're not sure you're right, because what you just said might make me think, hey, they can rest next week. They can jack off next week. This week, the Carr's going to want to redeem himself. I could hear someone very sharp say that exact same thing.
That's a good point.
Right? So
I think the weather also, it's everything. The wide receivers are hurt and the 30 degrees.
So why bring in the motivation?
Team? You brought it up, actually.
No, you kept saying you thought the Raiders feel like they're out of it. They're not motivated.
Because I think that they're going to. I
didn't bring it up
because they're going to rest the wide receivers. I think because if they're like risking any kind of further future injury.
And I think this is where we see Bettor's period get into trouble this year. And look, Fezzik, if Fez and I had to go head to head betting, Fez would beat me, and I'll go ahead and say that right now. But look, I'm pretty good at this at what I do in this industry too, and I see a lot of people and a lot of lines get carried way too far away from the value this year because of perceived motivation. I mean, we've talked about 3 games. We mentioned motivation in all of them, and I'm not sure that we can be 100% clear that we're actually accurate in determining it. We're just making assumptions in every single case.
You know something? That's pretty sharp, because what happens is people don't have reference points. If you don't have power ratings, and again, with Fez, he gives them for free on his Twitter, at Fezzik Sports, F-E-Z-Z-I-K, at Fezzik Sports, only Twitter account for Fez, and up at pregame.com in the forums every Wednesday. And at least then you can say, okay, this line, like we did in the last game, this line maybe should be 3. It's up to 5. I just think I'm not sure there's a motivation edge, but it's certainly not enough to get to 5 for me. But if you don't have any sense of what the spread should be, really, other than a vague sense, you could just say, yeah, good motivation here, bad motivation here. I'm betting them. Well, what happens if it was 2 points higher? Yeah, still motivation. And, I told Colin this. Now, listen, he ended up pushing because, in a way, it made it seem even smarter. Last week, he kept talking about the 49ers. Now, at the time we did the podcast or the show we record, and then he puts it out Saturday morning through his Twitter and the Herd on Twitter, is I told him, I said, I agree Jimmy G's a lot better, and I agree with all this, but are you really telling me they're almost as good as the Titans? And for me, I know you like San Fran in that game, Fez, but at the time the line was only 1 and he had laid 2, and it was like, it was getting bet back. But to me, I don't think if the line was 4, I think he would have. And again, Colin is as sharp as any radio guy, I think, really. But I don't think he had any, what should the line be? And you especially see that with road favorites, because if the teams are pretty close, the home team being 3, you kind of get the point. Oh, wait, they're 5. That means they're much better. I'm not sure. But when a road team is like 2.5, people have so little sense of what the real difference is in those teams. They just handicap on narrative without considering power rating.
And narrative move lines way too much this time of year,
which offers value fading the narrative.
That's why I tried to fade it myself.
I think also with the motivation, you should be like a poker player where you put your opponent on a certain range of hands and you say, hey, it's 90% they're really motivated, or maybe it's only 70%, 10% normal motivation. Maybe it's 20% that they're not motivated when it's unclear. Like last week, I made a mistake. I'll go ahead and admit to it. I said, boy, I've seen Rodgers come back from injury, and he's always at right around 100%. He's always Aaron Rodgers, he wins the big games. That was a mistake. I should have said, hey, there's a 50% chance he'll be that way, and maybe there's a 30% chance he's going to be very rusty. Well, I think
someone mentioned that.
He was very rusty.
I think someone mentioned that.
Yes, they did.
You remember that?
Yes, I do. And I was wrong.
Once again, it is R.J. Bell.
That's who. All right, next game. So under Fez and the Eagles. You did a little Fonzie there for those below the age of 50. I watched a lot of reruns of Fonzie growing up in the 80s. Let's say that. Browns Bears. This is me versus the Browns. RJ versus the Browns, and I'm the only one that likes this game, and I like the Browns. It's the Browns plus 6.5 against the Bears, and I'm not betting it, though. I've made a pledge. I'm not betting the Browns until the playoff. Oh, wait. I'm not betting the Browns no matter what this year, but I do like them here. And here's my rationale. I think the case could be made the Bears are equally bad as the Browns. Like, if you actually take out the game against the Bengals, which we now are saying and seeing, I think, the Bengals have given up. I've never seen a team play as badly 2 straight weeks. I mean, for example, Matt, if you look at yards per play of the Bengals and look how they played the last 2 weeks, let's just say yards per play on the season doesn't really matter.
4.6 yards per play for Cincinnati last 3 weeks, which would put them in the bottom 5 of the National Football League.
And to me, it was worse. I mean, it's probably worse than that. I mean, the way the Bengals played the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, because last 3 includes the game against Pittsburgh where they were motivated.
I'm shocked it's that good. That's what Baltimore's was for like the first 13
Yeah, but that's 3
weeks.
games, remember? And the game before that was the Steeler game. They did pretty well, right? Okay. So, to me, is you take that Bears game, give them credit, they won. But other than that, since Green Bay was favored over... since Chicago was favored over Green Bay at home, I'd say other than that Cincy game, the Bears are as bad as the Browns. if not worse.
Especially offensively. Since Mitchell Trubisky took over at quarterback, they do not score points. That Cincinnati game was a complete outlier to the entire season from Mitchell Trubisky starting on. They just don't score enough points to ever lay this kind of number in my mind.
So, Fez, I mean, right now, let's look at your power ratings. Where do you get the Bears, and where do you get? So you actually have 3 points better.
Yeah, I think they should be 3 points. But I mean, I think you're a little bit data mining on the poor Bears. Remember, it was the Detroit Lions had to kick a 51-yard field goal to beat them. Even the terrible second game they played against the Lions, the Bears are down 20-10. They could have gotten in the back door there. You look at Cleveland and some of their games. Well, we talk about how bad the Bengals are. Well, the Bengals rolled.
First of all, when you don't
twice.
cover a teaser, it's kind of hard to act like they should have somehow yeah, they lost, and if you teased them, you lost.
No, they covered the teaser.
No, they did.
Plus 5 up to plus 11.
Yeah.
They got
did
it
cover
done
the
on the
teaser.
teaser.
Okay.
Matty knows because almost every team covered the teaser last week.
Yes, almost every team.
He's still
hit
paying
the
out teaser tickets.
We don't let bookies complain here. You know that, right?
All right. I thought I was the exception.
No, you're the bookie I like best.
Oh, all right.
But when you've won 51 straight months, Las Vegas has in sports betting, you don't complain.
Okay.
RJ, I agree with you that in the stats, these are two pretty darn identical teams. How many times do you have to see Kaiser get strip sacked in his own end zone and give 6 points to the other team till you say, you know what, what is it, minus 21 turnover differential for Cleveland? It goes up every week. Thank goodness I didn't bet Matty on each game. Will Cleveland win the turnover battle?
Listen,
it is sustainable. It's going to continue.
As Cousin Sal says, he calls him Kaiser So-So instead of... It's pretty good. All right, Matty, lean or like?
I'm going to lean Cleveland here only because I do think the teams are equal, and I'm not buying into any of this, hey, the Bears are super motivated not to beat Cleveland, or Cleveland's super motivated to win their first game of the season. Both these teams want to win this game. They both have equal motivation. Neither one of them scores a bunch of points. And in a game where we don't expect there to be a lot of scoring, those 6.5 points become even more valuable. Thus, I have to lean to the 6.5.
Very savvy point is, think about it. If you had a total of 29, you go extreme, and you were getting 10. How much more do you like that than if the total is 49, right? So, good stuff. Faz, you pass it.
I'm a pass.
So you don't even lean to the Browns.
I don't even lean. It's a complete pass, but I tell you what's going to happen. In town here, someone's going to put 7.5 on their parlay cards, and they're going to sucker me in to take that 7.5 because of the mathematical value, and I'm going to lose.
And I'm going to lose. And luckily, because you show so much
peace and love
to all the bookmakers in town, they'll let you put those cards in.
Yeah, they let me put in plus 7.5 against Baltimore when the line was 6.5, and I got my teeth kicked in.
Let me ask you a question. If they required you to walk up to whoever the shift manager was and look down at your shoes and say, "Sir, may I play 5 parlay cards today, please, sir?" Would you do it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it would. At least he's honest.
Yeah.
At least... You know, like Tony Montana has the chain around him and the chainsaw, and it's like, F you. Fez is like, no, if I can get 5 more cards in. All right. So I like the Browns, but I hate the Browns. Next game. This is an injury and motivation special, so we might get the voice from Matty. We got the Bucks. We got the Panthers. Panthers at home, favored by 10. And Matty, you think this is one where injuries maybe aren't being considered properly?
Yeah, I mean, this time of year, we have to look into these games. And Tampa Bay last week, it's not just the short week. Both their tight ends went down in the first half of that game. O.J. Howard having an amazing rookie year at tight end. Cameron Brate both went down. They lost 3 players in the secondary last week in that game, which was a great game against Atlanta. But, I mean, that was their Super Bowl game. Monday Night Football against their division rival and defending NFC champion Atlanta Falcons. They had every reason to get up for that game. And not only did they walk out of it with a huge demoralizing loss on a missed field goal, they lost both their tight ends, 3 players from the secondary. You talk about motivation this week. Not only motivation, but decimation in that defense as far as injuries. Hard to see Tampa Bay getting up this week. I lean Carolina.
That's interesting. Fez.
I lean Carolina. Matty nailed it. Remember.
So do you agree with him on the injuries, on the motivation?
Absolutely. 100%. It was their game of the year last Monday Night Football, similar to the Dolphins the week before when they beat the Patriots and then came up lame
example
against Buffalo. But, the difference is that Tampa was already decimated on defense with injuries before the game even kicked off Monday night. Now they got with it by the second quarter, they had 4 more fresh injuries on the defensive side, and their offense got injured with their tight ends, etc. And further, and I haven't heard anyone else mention this, Tampa Bay, not only do they have a short week, they did not get a bye all year long because of the hurricane week 1 against the Dolphins, canceling that game. So if ever there's a team on a short work week that's going to mail in a game, it's them.
Huh, that's some good stuff there. Kind of like the USC in college football, but this was because of the hurricane. And is that applied to I guess Miami's not on a short work week, but same concept,
Same
right?
concept applies to the Dolphins running out of gas late.
Yeah, that's interesting. Here's my question, and I'm going to make this quick because, again, we got a lot of games today, let's go and think about it from a bookie's perspective, Matt, speaking of Cousin Sal, I was on his podcast a few weeks ago. I guess it's been 3 or 4. And he was talking about, well, what do you think about just taking 3 big favorites and parlaying them, money line parlay? And it's like, hey, they're not going to lose. And you're getting even money or even a plus payout, right? Which is
what we saw last week at the books.
But again, that's the hyper square approach. And the thing I love about Sal, to be honest, he doesn't act like he's sharp. Right, he's trying to learn and all, but he's the everyman, right? So there's nothing worse than someone acting like they're sharp when they're not, right? And not that even the sharpest people in the world make mistakes, and you could go through the many hours of my pods or Fez's and find things and say, oh, that maybe isn't true. But in general, if someone tries to be sure, and that's why what you notice, quite frankly, is that people don't know what they're talking about, but want to try to act like they do very little live media, right? Because like when we do our Fox National show 3 hours a week, Friday night, Saturday night, 330 stations nationwide, that's something where if Fez says something dumb, I say something dumb, it's out there to the world, right? There's no way to hide it. But the guys that don't know what they're doing, they don't want to be on live radio, right? They avoid that like a plague. And I give Sal credit. Hey, he's a guy aspiring to learn about betting, and I think it's very entertaining. So that said, is this a rare case you maybe look at the Panthers on the money line? Because the Panthers are defensive oriented. It seems like when they want to run, or when they have a chance, they want to run. Meaning if they can control the game, they're going to run, slow this baby down. So getting margin might be more difficult than usual because it's maybe a lower scoring game if they do control the game. And maybe they end up dominating and only winning by 10.
I actually disagree with that whole theory. I don't know that there's any extra added value than there is laying the spread in this game. And to me, the risk is there is a small risk in this game because Cam Newton hasn't always played well as a big favorite. And he took the side of the owner who had to sell the team. And he kind of threw one of those Cam temper tantrums this week about, I agree, this guy shouldn't have had to sell the team. He didn't do anything wrong. And every once in a while, when Cam isn't laser vision focused, the bad Cam comes out. And when the bad Cam comes out, this is a vulnerable Panther team.
How did we just get to this point? That's the best point. But you're giving me, you're winking at me, but we almost left this game before we said this.
Yeah.
Fez, how are you handicapping the owner disruption?
I think it increases the variability. It's likely not a factor, right? But it's like a 5% chance it could be factor.
I think he's making a key point. Cam is an emotional quarterback, and it seems like even if it's just disruptive, emotional people get affected more by disruptive stressors.
So if Cam comes out and he's fine, I'm happy to lay the 10 against a injury-riddled, decimated, tired, beat down, demoralized Tampa team. But I don't want to lay minus 600 or minus 500 because what if the bad Cam
I agree because it's high variance. But let me just ask you quickly, for the same reason you're saying getting 6 with the Browns because it's a lower scoring game means that there's certain types of games, low scoring games, low variance teams and such, where either taking point or either laying the money line or taking the money line makes more sense.
I don't know that I believe this is going to be a low-scoring game because of the amount of turn.
But you agree in general that sometimes taking the dog, like we talk on the college bowls, there's much, much higher variance in these bowl games. So if you like a dog, don't be afraid to take him big on the money line.
Yes.
You agree with that in general?
100%.
Okay.
But I do think that the basic strategy when you see a 10-point spread is not to play the money line on the dog or the favorite. And the reason is because the bid-ask straddle, Wall Street style, you're looking at minus 550 if you want to play the favorite, plus 400 if you want to play the dog at most shops. The difference is too great to ever really find a gem other than in a few rare situations.
Okay, now that's fine. So like in boxing or whatever, it'd be the same concept if it's a minus 800 plus 500 or whatever.
Yeah, it's difficult to find.
You know what's funny? And again, I guess I'm going to show, I'm not afraid to show when something I should know I don't. If you actually throw those big spreads, though, into the a calculate, I have a spreadsheet that will say, oh, the holds here are only 4.5% or something, even though there's a big straddle. So what am I missing about that?
Look, and I've seen some of those. We've already seen this situation a couple times this year. An injury-riddled and decimated New York Giants team beats a Denver team who was red hot at the time. Injury-riddled, dead tired, travel around the world Miami Dolphins team goes into Atlanta, who was red hot at the time, and beats the Falcons. There's large variability, period, in the NFL.
As far as preserving the hold, it becomes such that in order to keep a 4.5% hold, literally when you get to the very highest levels of VIG, RJ, you almost have to charge like minus 10,000 in one direction and plus 400 in the other direction to keep that hold. And so if you're a dart thrower and you say, what should the number be as an odds maker, you can almost be blindfolded and throw the dart and get it in between the corridor and be safe.
And I understand it. I guess it just intuitively doesn't make sense that we're saying, well, the bookie's only holding 4%, but it's an unbettable because of how much he's holding.
Yeah, and the best example at home, go through, it's like a 500 to 1 underdog. You'll be shocked. It's like you only get paid like 20 to 1, and if someone has to lay 500
I understand.
to 1
it's just
back.
there's something there's a flaw in the way I'm thinking about the math. That's what I'm trying to get to. But I guess I'll be better to do when I'm home at night.
I'll do that project.
Oh, if you can explain, that'd be a good tease. That'd be something to understand.
Go up in our forums here.
All right. So hard to play big strat. I'm making a note here. When I have my book, it's going to be all from you guys in the pod. I think I'm teasing.
220-page business card, baby.
Chapter 12, the VIG.
How I hate the VIG, but I kind of like Matty. All right, guys, here we go. Pros versus Joes. We've got more of them than we've ever had, and some of them are going to, let's just say there's going to be some fun with Huey, I think. Steelers, Texans, and we've got right now the Steelers favored by 9 on the road. This is the Steelers unequivocally the worst big road favorite in the NFL. I had a stat, and I'm just going by memory here, where if you go back during the Tomlin era, there had been it's been a couple weeks ago, there's been 15 or so 9-point or bigger road favorites to lose, and 5 of them were the Steelers, and the other 10 were spread amongst 31 NFL teams. So I don't like this spot at all, especially, in theory, the infighting and such. Fez, you actually like?
I like Houston. This looks like Pittsburgh Steelers underperform 101, lose the really, really big game, and now they got to play on Christmas as a big favorite. They're probably looking past Houston, who looked terrible last week. Further, Antonio Brown's not going to play, their playmaker. I could see this one going, same as the Steeler game against Green Bay, going right down to the wire.
All right, so let's talk about Christmas real quick. So Fez likes Houston. We'll get to what the Sharps and everything think in a minute. Is road team, home team, Christmas, motivated, unmotivated? How do we generally handicap Christmas, the holidays?
So normally, it's difficult. We try to normalize it as a normal game because in theory, everyone wants.
So you're saying no factor?
I actually think it's much less of a factor than you're going to be led to believe.
And what do you think the consensus sharp opinion is? Not what squares think, but in general, if you polled 100 of your best NFL bettors and asked them, what is the Christmas factor?
If I took my 100 most winningest bettors in sports, period, and polled them on this question, I think we would end up with it's very minutia, if any impact.
Okay, Fez, what's your belief on it?
Very little impact. I went back to the results last year. It was hit or miss, not favorites, but road versus home in terms of how they did right around Christmas. I do think it was interesting that New England beat the Jets 41-3, and And I was thinking, New England's the type of team, they don't get distracted for any reason. So they might be the exception to the rule.
Now, here's what I would say, just playing amateur psychologist here. Teams with motivation risk, the risk goes up, right? Because it's like if I'm doing a job or something and I'm not a great worker, but my friends are in town, we all know about that, right? Now, I try to be a really good worker, but even with my effort, is my friends are in town, I might stay up till 2:30 in the morning, even if I have an 8 o'clock meeting, right? So we think the players are going to be less inclined, this isn't like partying necessarily, to maybe go a little extra Christmas shopping or whatever if there's nothing at stake.
But don't you think that helps the road team a little bit? Because who's more likely to stay up late with their friends? The guys at home who have family in town?
You know what's funny? Some sharps think it's the other way, that the road team has the disadvantage. And this makes a little sense to me, which is the road team has to do all their prep before they leave. And the home team, let's say that, and again, the game being exactly on Christmas is a little different, right? But think about it. If the game is, let's say Christmas is going to be the day after, let's say Christmas is a Monday in a given year. Well, in theory, if you're at home, you can play that game and maybe Sunday night or Monday morning do some stuff. But if you're on the road, you've got to do it on Thursday or whatever, and thus it's distracting you before you try.
Why do you have to do it Thursday
busy
if you're on the road? Can't you fly back? I mean, don't these guys fly back that night pretty quick nowadays?
Yeah, but and maybe you're just saying there's nothing to this at all. But I would say this, as a non-NFL player, I'm the most frazzled before a trip. And I think most people would agree with that, right? Because you're getting everything done that you have to do when you're gone.
I think these guys travel for a living, though. It's part of their profession.
I actually think on Christmas Eve, which is when most of these games are, that it's a little bit of it. If there's an advantage, it would be to the road team, because you've got the home team, the players are distracted, family in town, whatever's going on. And if you're the road team.
So it's funny, Fez, when his family comes in town, like the world stops, do you really think NFL players are saying, my mom's here, so I can't get ready for the game?
Yes, I think that there's a lot of that going on. I really do. I think that they're out scrambling to get presents for the kids. And you make it sound like these guys are just like Superman and they don't have lives.
Well, first of all, I think most NFL players that are 22, 23, 24 don't give an F about any of this. Right. So when it comes to family, so maybe this is more about the older team, and now we're getting too into it, I think. Right. So maybe kind of feeling like there's nothing there might be the simplest way. And maybe there is something there. But if there's something there and you don't know exactly what it is, it's a moot point anyway. Right. All right. So another thing. Oh, speaking of the Steelers, when on last Sunday I was preparing a piece of sound for us. I'm not sure if I should still play it. Well, and then maybe not.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
All right. So, Matty, you lean.
I lean Houston, and one of the things we haven't touched on in this game yet, and I can't believe it yet, is the value of Antonio Brown. The two most important wide receivers to their teams in the National Football League to the point spread are in this game, DeAndre Hopkins and Antonio Brown. We saw DeAndre Hopkins. We heard the talks of turf toe last week. It ended up not being turf toe. It just ended up being a toe injury. He played, looked fine, looks like he's running fine. Now that it's not turf toe, we don't have to worry about the lingering injury issues the rest of the year. Antonio Brown, the number one rated receiver in terms of what he means to a point spread out this week. Look, I think that alone adds a little bit of extra value in a spot that already seems like a flat spot for Pittsburgh. I got to lean to the 9.5 with Houston.
Yeah, I agree with that. What do we make, if anything, of the Tomlin and Big Ben and all the back and forth and all that?
No, that seems like status quo in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's a good point. The funny thing is, no one's talking about the fact that Pittsburgh was in a, well, I guess before the replay, you would have said 95% winning situation, right? Because most people didn't think that replay was good. Now, there were in-game odds at that point, right, Fez?
Not.
Or will they take them down when the replay's undecided?
Yeah, what they do sometimes is they'll put up just the odds of, will this play be overturned? And I can tell you, although I agreed with it being overturned, I would have bet probably $3 to make $1 that it was not going to be overturned.
And you were even thinking, though, was it a completed catch? Because it seemed like people weren't even thinking of that.
Exactly. I was thinking that's not a catch, but they ruled it a touchdown. They're not going to overrule it. That's what my thought was.
But you think about it, how different would this narrative be if Pittsburgh wins that game, which they obviously could have, and without Brown for most of the game, it'd be like it's the Steelers are the dominant team. They got to come back to Pittsburgh. Brady's old. Wow. And you think back to it, obviously the Patriots were a significant underdog against Seattle when Seattle was on the 2-yard line in the Super Bowl, right?
Yes.
And they were a historically big underdog against Atlanta
when it was 28-0
or 28-3, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is if Patriots had lost those 2 games, what would the narrative be? Is all of Belichick's trading back and not caring about getting named players can get you to the door, but it can't get you through?
Lost twice to the Giants. Just, hey, the Eagles could have beat them,
I mean, it's just so funny, man. A lot of coin flips in life. All right. Oh, by the way, Fez on Houston, 90% of the account sharp money on Houston, 80% over the counter on Pittsburgh. The pros and Fez on Houston. Next game.
Got to parlay some of that to the under also. It's correlated nicely.
So real quick, correlated just because of the low total or?
Correlated because Pittsburgh has trouble in games on the road. I've seen it. Big Ben is so much better at home than on the road that I'm not expecting Houston to get a whole lot of points. I'm really counting on Pittsburgh to underperform to cover the spread.
Yeah, because it's hard to imagine Houston covering if it's a shootout either, right? Okay. Next game, next pros versus Joes. We've got the Jags. We've got the 49ers. And Fez, you like this game too. And let's announce it first. 90% of the account money, this is the professional money on the 49ers, 95% of the over-the-counter on the Jags. So the public's on the Jags, the professionals on the 49ers. Faz, you like?
I like the 49ers. 4th straight week. The record shows the 49ers 4-10. I disagree. The 49ers are 3-0. I know we spoke about Jimmy G that first game. He only got 250. You had him, someone only ranked him number 16 in terms of quarterback performance that year. The next week he gets...
First off, if you're going to try to contradict me, get it straight. It was Football Outsiders that week, for the year, had him number 16.
That's right. For that week, number 16. So the next week he puts up 300 and the Jimmy G bandwagon starts to grow. Last week he puts up almost 350. Clear cut. We talked about under Shanahan, takes a long time to learn the system and get it right. Clearly he's improving each and every week. And I know the Jaguars and Bortles has been great. 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's been arguably the best quarterback the past 3 weeks, 3 home games in the league. Let's see him do it when he has to travel all the way out to the West Coast. I think it's a bad spot for Jacksonville against a surging 49er team.
Jimmy G had Fez at hello.
Yes.
All right. So first off, I genuinely believe the line is being affected in the 49ers game by Jimmy G's smile. I mean, everyone who talks about him, well, not everyone, 70% of the guys in talk radio that talk about him talk about how good looking he is. And I really genuinely believe it's like, listen, if you read anything about George Washington, they say that it's unequivocal he would have never been the father of our country if he was like 6'3" back when the average guy was like 5'4", right? And there's a famous line with Ben Franklin. He goes, there are a lot of people that will follow the tallest man in the room. And leader, you think about it, presidents are always always at least above average tall. And most presidents are like above 6'2". Think about it. I mean, how could that just be random? If you look through history, at the height of the presidents, which is the ultimate assessment of popularity, right? You're voted the president of the United States, and they're all so much taller than average. So, Matty, as a bookmaker, is it reasonable that there's a premium on Jimmy G's smile?
There certainly is, but when you look at the numbers here, they actually point out that these teams have been very similar. Since Garoppolo started games, Jacksonville stayed the same, 4.9 yards per play allowed. But when you look at San Francisco, who was a terrible defense all year, last 3 games, Jimmy Garoppolo starting as quarterback, 4.9 yards per play allowed. So they're allowing the exact same yards per play. But as good as that San Francisco offense has been, 5.9 yards per play on offense. Since Jimmy Garoppolo took over, you know who's been better? The Jacksonville Jaguars last 3 games, 6.6 yards per play on offense. As you said it, Blake Bortles actually been the best quarterback in the NFL the last 3 weeks. I think, though, in this case, you got to go with Jimmy G and then the 49ers catching this many points, because one thing I like to do is a team that hasn't made the playoffs in more than 5 years, the game after they clinch that playoff berth, if they're a favorite of more than 3, I like to take the dog anyway. Also, with all the momentum that San Francisco has, it adds a little extra value to me. So I'm going to go ahead and lean toward the 49ers.
So that was when I kind of got lost with all the, and I think we got to be careful with audio. And what I would suggest is if you have the league averages, I think it's a lot easier to hear like, oh, they're a third of a yard better than the league average on offense, because I'm not even sure the league averages obviously change. So what's the league averages right now?
For yards per play on offense, it's like 5.6.
And it would be on defense too, right?
Yes.
All right.
And I think it's only 5.4 because there's been so much bad quarterback play.
All right, so let's
last year.
Okay. So what do you think, though? How much of the Jimmy G effect do you think? Let's break it up into 3 categories. One is his play on the field.
Yes.
Relative to the prior quarterback. Number 2 is the energy generated from Jimmy G because they're excited they have a franchise quarterback, it looks like.
Correct.
And number 3, and I'm not joking, is the dreamboat quality, that this guy's like a movie star type, and it's getting the fans excited, which means they're going to bet on him.
But their defense is also playing better,
which would be driven by energy on the team.
Sure.
So how would you break up the Jimmy G effect into those 3 buckets? Like, what percentage of it is his on the field play? If it was 100% of the Jimmy G effect, let's break it up into 3 percentages that add up to 100. On the field play,
60%.
Motivation for the rest of the team,
30%.
His smile,
10%.
Fez, how would you break it up?
I could go along with that, and I could argue his smile cost you the cover last week because that line was 2, it dropped down to 1, and he went all the way up to 2.5. And when they win by 2, Jimmy G is
he's
smiling.
Even tongue-tied when he's talking about Jimmy G.
Your losing ticket at post when they were laying 2.5.
Guys, here's my request to you. I don't ask for a lot. Here's my request: send Jimmy G the picture you think that he's the most attractive to Fezzik on Twitter. Make sure that you have me involved because I want to see them all, and we will retweet. This is a problem. I don't do these kind of things very often. 154,000 followers on Twitter at RJ in Vegas. I will retweet the best picture of Jimmy G where he looks the most handsome. Just send it to me at RJ in Vegas and Fez at Fezzik Sports, Fezzik. Best one gets retweeted.
But he's not going to look as good as your girl of the day looked today on the pregame.com forums. That took away from a little bit of my handicapping.
Damn, that's the first time he's ever talked about a hot chick. So do you think deep down he's been talking about Jimmy G so much? Now, he has a son, he's married. He might be worried that, like, I better make sure people know I'm all man, baby. Was there any of that, Fez?
I think they know.
It's so obvious. All right. So Fez is with the Sharps on San Fran. You agree. Last thing, how good is this Jags team? I mean, right now, Fez, you've got them only 4 teams better in your power ratings. The Saints, the Vikings, the Rams, the Patriots. You've got them better than the Steelers, accounting for the fact that Brown's out. That's accounted for here. Do you agree, Matty, with that in general?
I do in general, but I think that there's a few teams that are a little inflated this year that has been able to rule the roost with solid quarterback play and a dominating defense, a.k.a. Minnesota Vikings and Case Keenum, Jacksonville and Blake Bortles, because there's been so many bad quarterbacks in the NFL this year that those dominating defenses look more dominating than ever. And thus, there's a few quarterbacks that we were all ready to give up on who now suddenly look like they're Super Bowl contenders.
I mean, the Jags could have the best pass defense in 5 years, though, right?
But in the playoffs, it's going to be a different story when you're facing 3 great quarterbacks instead of 3 really bad ones in a row, which all of these really good defenses have had that opportunity during the season to face 3 really bad quarterbacks in a row.
Next, Pros versus Joes. Chargers at the Jets. Chargers on the road, favored by 6.5. Matty, you passed this game, and 90% of the Sharps on the Chargers and 80% of over-the-counter on the Jets. Wow, that's unusual. So the public on the dog, the pros on the favorite, the big road favorite. Wow. Fez, leaner like?
I lean Chargers. I'm a little worried about a team from Los Angeles having to go to 40 degrees and light rain, but it's not like there's going to be a blizzard. All about line value here. RJ, overreaction, I think, to one game. The Chargers, unlike the Raiders, they still have a legitimate chance to actually make the playoffs. And I think they're going to be fully motivated. They're laying 10.5 on the look-ahead line. Now they're laying 6.5 because they played that bad game against the Chiefs. And the Jets, the perception is, hey, they played that really good game against the Saints. Almost won. I watched the whole game. I'll admit Bryce Petty was better than I expected, but the Saints fumbled twice. It was a misleading game for the Jets to only be down 5 points at the end of the game. And frankly, I think the Saints were sleepwalking in a sandwich spot.
I tell you, this Chargers team, I just feel like they're over. I can't like the Chargers. I just feel like they're a little overrated. Matty, it seems like the sharps on the Chargers. You pass. Why not the Chargers for you?
First of all, I don't believe it that they have a really good chance of making the playoffs here. They're one spot ahead of the Oakland Raiders in the playoff race in the AFC.
There's only 2 games left.
Yeah, they're 7-7. I mean, is a 9-7 team going to make the playoffs from the AFC?
You know what we should do for next week, especially? All this stuff's projected out,
That's right.
We should just get the numbers.
Bring them with us. Absolutely. I just can't. I'm with you. There's such a correlation this year, and if you go back and look at when Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen have a huge game together, LA Chargers win, and when one of them doesn't, like last week, Keenan Allen only had 50 yards, and he threw 3 interceptions. They lost. Go back and look at those numbers, and I don't trust Phillip enough not to throw interceptions. I just can't lay it here.
All right, guys. Now, this is fascinating for the next game. We've got a double like from Matty and from Fez, but it's a pros versus Joes also. So I'm going to hold back the pros versus Joes for what they call in the business the reveal. Lions, Bengals, Lions on the road, favored by 5. We talked about how bad the Bengals have been recently. Now they're a 5-point home dog. Fez, who do you like?
I like the Bengals quite a bit, in fact, and I'm going to make my case very simply. Just a week ago, the Lions were playing a very comparable team to the Bengals. They were playing the Chicago Bears. What's the better team? I'm not even going to debate what's the better team. Call them in the same bucket. Well, the Lions were hosting the Bears, and they were laying 5. Now they're at Cincinnati. The weather's not going to be good. They're a dome team that's got to go into the outdoors, and they're still laying 5. Too much of an overreaction to 1 week. The look-ahead line last week on this game was pick 'em. But what happened? The Bengals played arguably 2 of the worst games you'll ever just see, and you're hearing that Q word, quit. One thing I've noticed about this year, whenever a team gets called out for quitting, like the Giants were earlier, all of a sudden that team oftentimes rallies up and plays a motivated game. It is the last home game for Marvin Lewis. I think they're going to play for him and play hard. I like the Bengals.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff there. Matty, you also like the Bengals.
And I completely agree with everything Fez said, but I also think that dissecting injury reports and distractions and what they mean to the team is so critically important. After that Pittsburgh game, Cincinnati was absolutely decimated with injuries in the game against the Chicago Bears, Mixon out, Vontaze Burfict out. They were, just lost guys everywhere. Last week, again, Mixon out, Burfict out. Oh, yeah, and your coach right before the game decides that he is going to tell the world that he's quitting and this will be his last season. You have to deal with that. Actually, morning of game. That's a major distraction, morning of game. Now we have the whole we're a week away from the coach saying he's going to resign.
What is the current status on that?
He's going to resign at the end of the season.
Is that your understanding, Faz?
No, I thought he waffled and he said he's not resigning. He's probably going to get fired. But I thought
I saw he's going to be gone, I assume, at the end of the season.
Yeah, he said that, but then I think he probably met with his agent who said, look, you want to get a better buyout, you better say you're not going to resign.
Yeah, I don't know, but it seems like it's a disruption, though, isn't it?
I thought it was a real disruption last week, the way he did it. And I thought that was a real detriment to a team already decimated with injuries. But this week, we don't know. Mixon's supposed to be back from the concussion. Burfict's questionable with his concussion. At least one of the two should probably make it through concussion protocol, maybe 2 of them. And I'm with Fez. I feel like the line's inflated because that's that recent trend. Detroit's coming off a win. They need the game, and I'm doing the kind of parentheses of my fingers when I say that. They need the game. Cincinnati's quit, which... none of these players in the NFL ever really quit. That's kind of an NBA thing. I think there's too much value built into this line.
But let's agree. I think it's fair to say sometimes we try to find motivation where it's not. But there's teams are listen. If you just look at teams out of the playoffs and take all their games and have an objective way to say did they lack motivation, and then you look at all teams that aren't eliminated from the playoffs, a greater percentage of teams that seemingly lack motivation lay eggs. I'm not saying it's all the time. Sometimes they'll shock you, but I think there's some point to finding out if a team's motivated or not.
But are they going to quit 3 weeks in a row? 2 weeks they
Which
had the
I
injury.
agree. Yeah. I agree with 100%. I think Fez said it. I think it's like the zigzag where in the NBA, if a team plays really badly in the playoffs, they tend to bounce back and the other team gets lackadaisical. In this case, I think teams that have to hear talk radio guys talk about it all week, you know, how bad they played, the local paper guys, they want to just shut them up. And usually you're going to see a zigzag where, you know, it's really the same theory as a letdown after the game of the year, right? You said the Dolphins, they in a way that win gave them enough rope to be a little lackadaisical, because what was that next one really going to get them? Right. So if anything, you kind of pointing at the Dolphins, Matty, and saying, yeah, Fez, you're right. Same handicap. That assumes some of these teams aren't always up. Right.
Sure. But it's very rare in this case, in this instance, just in this one game, that you're ever going to see a team be down 3 games in a row.
No, I agree with you there. All right. So you guys both like Cincinnati, and the smart money is 80% of the smart money on Cincinnati. So this is an official triple like, and we've never had this before, triple like with the Joes on the other side, which means, and remember, guys, whenever a line is moving because of public bias, it tends to keep moving that way. Now, the public or the pros can bet so much it jacks it back, but this is one where, in theory, the public's going to keep betting against Cincy come game day, you would think.
Yeah, if it hits 6, there'll be such immediate sharp buyback that it.
So you think if you can get a 6, get a 6?
Correct.
Fez, what's your guess where this closes?
I actually think it's going to close 3.5. I think it's such a strong play on the Bengals. I think that you're going to get.
So you're saying, all right.
Huge bets on the dog.
Remember, Fez puts up his line move predictions in the pregame.com forums for free every week, 70% lifetime.
And I told you to get the Steelers before it dropped down from +3.
That's true, Fez. That's true. All right. We've got 2 more pros versus Joes, but both of them, guys, are in the best bets, if you can believe it. That's going to be fun. Now we have a double like. Giants, Cardinals. Right now we've got the Cardinals favored by 3.5 in this game. Matty, you pass.
Yeah.
I actually like this game with Fez, and I like Arizona. Fez, you like Arizona. Go.
I like Arizona. I'm going to keep this simple. I'm going to give you 9 reasons to like Arizona, RJ.
All right, go ahead.
They're the 9 field goals that Arizona has kicked the last 2 games with no touchdowns. Any team that gets into the red zone is favored to get a touchdown versus a field goal, yet they've gone 9-0. They've just been unlucky not getting in the end zone. They switched quarterbacks to go into Stanton, which is a slight half-point upgrade. Ober, Gabbert, they're going to score some touchdowns. There's value in Arizona.
So 9 straight times they've been in the red zone, they've gotten a field goal.
Yes.
So they're perfect scoring.
Yes. And when I say in the red zone, they've got into the scoring zone because some of them they didn't cross the 20, but they crossed the 35.
So they had 9 straight field goals without a touchdown is another way to say it.
Yes.
Wow. And most of the time,
Never seen that.
Really? I didn't know that stat. That I actually like Arizona too, and I think it's an example of these teams want an excuse, or maybe they don't want an excuse, but if they don't have a reason to be motivated, they can tend not to be. Giants had their all-in game, their Super Bowl against the Cowboys, and then the thought 2 weeks ago, and the thought was, oh, well, maybe they're not going to be up for the Eagles. Obviously, they were up and played well against the Eagles relatively. They covered. But now it's like they're going on the road to Arizona across the country. Can this be during a holiday? I mean, do they really want to be there? I know we don't want to get too much into the holiday stuff, but maybe this is the one game. You think the Giants, in a game that means literally nothing, want to be in Arizona away from their family and their mommies, Fez?
I think they might want to. I think they might want to be away, but not to play a football game. Have some fun in Phoenix.
You're going to give a little bit to that in this case?
Yeah, the thing that kept me away from this game was Drew Stanton. He has not been impressive. I'm not even sure he is an upgrade from Blaine Gabbert. And the other point, Fez is saying, hey, they've been so unlucky. They've kicked 9 straight field goals. So I think they're going to start scoring touchdowns. I've watched their last couple of games as well, especially I watched every minute of the game versus Tennessee, and their offense was inept. I mean, they got turnovers that led to two of those field goals that they got. It wasn't like, hey, we moved the football and failed to score a touchdown. It was, hey, here's the ball to 25, and now you're 4th and 9 from the 24, and you're kicking field goals.
I mean, no one's questioning that they should have worse red zone stats, Arizona, than, let's say, the Patriots. But still, no matter how bad you are, you're not supposed to score 9 straight field goals. But here's my question, Fez. You've got Arizona 4.5 points worse than an average NFL team, number 22. You got the Giants as tied for the second worst NFL team with the Jets behind only the Browns. Remember the Jets with their quarterback situation. So there's a 4-point difference in your power ratings. Arizona's at home. They at least have an average home field. This line should be 7.5.
That's what the power ratings say. That's why I like Arizona.
Oh, I mean, that was a little glib. I mean, you never see that big of a spread in your power ratings.
I think that what's happened is that the Giants are a public market and people want to believe in Eli. So they see one competitive game, one really well-played game by the Giants, and they jump back on, and they've forgotten all year long the Giants have been literally just a little bit better than Cleveland, one of the worst teams consistently in the NFL.
And power ratings or not, the Arizona Cardinals have got some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL.
But he's accounting for that. I mean, maybe you disagree with the rating, but Fez's rating is this team this week is, let's look at the teams around him. He's saying they'd be pick him against Miami, Arizona. Do you disagree with that?
Yeah, I do.
You think Miami'd be like a 2-point favorite?
Like a 1. I think they're about a half point better.
He's saying they'd be a half-point favorite, a smidge favorite over the Bengals, a smidge favorite over the Bucks. I agree with all that, actually.
There probably should be bigger favorites, right, when you think about it?
I don't know.
Certainly favored, though.
But so, Fez, what do you so we always talk about the bookmaking line splits the action and the bettors line splits the result. If you were making a bettors line on this game, what would it be?
I would make it 6.5 to 7.
So why is it less in your power ratings?
I'm worried about the home field for Arizona. It's a nice home field, but they're out of the playoffs. I don't know if it's even at 3 at this point in the year.
Double like on Arizona. Me and Fez. Next game is the smart money. And then we've got 3 best bets in the 2 Saturday games. A lot of action coming up here. Smart money game. We've got the Broncos. We've got the Redskins. Right now, the Redskins favored by 3.5. Fez, you like the Redskins. Oh, I'm sorry. You like Denver in this game.
I like Denver. I really think.
Which agrees with the smart money. You're in sync with the smart money, baby.
I hope the smart money has a big week. The Redskins, we were worried about them to start the year. They lost their 2 1,000-yard wide receivers, but Kirk Cousins played so well. He overcame all those injuries, and they started 3-2. Remember, the O-line got decimated. Well, who are the real Washington Redskins? I'll argue the last 9 games. They're 3-6. One of those wins was against a San Fran team that did not have Jimmy G, and they only won 26-24. Since they lost that game to Dallas, 38-14, got knocked out of the playoff contention, they stick a fork in them. They've been absolutely done. They're the recipient of the phony win against Arizona, kicking all the field goals last week, where they won by 5 points despite getting outgained by 80 yards. Denver's going in completely the opposite direction. They had that 8-game losing streak. We talked about that. Elite D was completely lacking in motivation. It's Paxton Lynch. We have no chance with no quarterback. Well, finally, the Ostrich played a good game, which gave the D a big zep to their step there. And the last 2 games, the defense has absolutely brought it. Shutout against the Jets, won 23-0, won 25-13 against Indianapolis, outgained Indy by over 200 yards. The key to Denver is that their elite D is back to being elite here.
Matty Holt, you lean against them here.
Yeah, I mean, I already used my passes, so I had to pick a side on this game.
Make it quick, because we're
so
running
I ended
long.
up leaning on Washington. The one thing that I should have used this game for my derivative bet, because I will make an in-play wager on this game bet. See who's winning in the first quarter of this game, because one thing happened during all 8 of those losses for Denver during that 8-game losing streak. When that offense turned the ball over early and wasn't successful at all, the defense quit. And you saw that the last month before the last 2 wins. So if this Denver offense, without Trevor Siemian, gets off to a slow start, I actually think they might quit. I would lean toward Washington.
I tell you, here's what I think about the motivation. I think that you guys, and I really haven't seen this till this year. This is some interesting stuff to me, is if a team is really flat and they get called out, they tend to bounce back out of pride the next week. That's interesting. But then if they have a big win, it's almost they have a license. Hey, come into work. Hey, we just signed a big account. You can come into work a little late the next day kind of mentality, right? But I think there's a trump card to that, which is Elway. Elway is a fanatic. I mean, he's a maniac. I think in a good way myself. I would want Elway or Steelers have a great GM, so I'm not going to complain about that. But Elway's a good GM, I think. Obviously, he's got the rings as a player, ring as a GM. But I don't think anyone's going to be willing to let. Obviously, the team was letting down, and Elway stepped up and was like talking like, who knows, you might fire half the people in the building. It feels like that A-type personality keeps them maybe with the effort level.
And these guys are playing for their jobs. And one thing I didn't mention that's critical here.
That sounds like a talk radio cliche. Who's playing for their job?
Well, the players know that Elway is looking to clean house.
All right, that's interesting. You're saying because he's more willing to maybe make a cut just to make a statement, they're more scared of playing for their jobs.
Right. But a critical aspect of this handicapping that I didn't mention is that we talked about all the uncertainties of the holidays. There aren't enough days and hours in the day. Well, Denver played Thursday. So they've got 3 extra days of prep for this game, and they're coming off 2 great games. They've had to play 7 of the last 10 games on the road now with this game. Normally I'd be concerned about that, but that 10 days of prep time is gold week 16.
That's interesting. If there is any holiday effect, having the 10 days helps with that. That's very interesting. Okay, so Fez likes Denver. Smart money's on Denver, and they are 3.5-point underdogs.
Not for long.
And just to be clear on my derivative, so how it works is I'm going to bet who's ever winning the football game. Normally in game, you try to look for the underdog to come back. Probably midway or late first quarter, whoever is winning, I'm going to bet in game.
All right, we've got 3 best bets coming up.
Don't know about the future, that's anybody's guess. Ain't no good reason for getting all depressed. Fire up your pad and pencil, I give you a piece of my mind.
Come on, Matty, sing along for the holidays in your girly voice.
I can't do it.
All right, this is Mr. Matty Holt, the bookmaker. He bets too. All right, Matty, there's been a lot of speculation. We want to give your Twitter account out, but a lot of people on Twitter are telling me until you have a celebrity, we shouldn't give it. Do you have any celebrities?
No.
All right, so Fez, can you do Macho Man Sav? We talked a little bit about, I love the podcast Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, and he does imitations all the time, but your Macho Man impresses me. Can you do Matty's Twitter as Macho Man?
Oh, yeah, I could if I remembered what it was. He's the vice president at CDT. Yeah, but you're going to have to look it up. Yeah.
I got to tell you, I'm blown away how good that is.
That's pretty good.
All right, what is it, Matty?
At Matthew Holt VP.
I mean, come on now. That is good.
Hey, now.
All right, Matty. Dolphins, Chiefs. You got a best bet on the total.
Yeah, I'm going under 44 in this game, and there's a lot of reasons why the public's going to jump all over Kansas City. The success against the Oakland Raiders, 7.1 yards per play last 3 games, which is almost 2 yards per play above what we call league average, at least 1.5 yards above league average. So at that point, Kansas City's going to look awful tempting. But look, they have one of the biggest home-away splits in all of football this year in terms of yards per play. At home, only averaging 5.5 yards per play. On the road, 6.8 yards per play. They'll be at home where they have suffered a little bit thus far this year. And the Miami Dolphins on the road on defense, 4.3 yards per play allowed, almost a full yard less than the average team allows on defense per play, the Miami Dolphins. On defense, on the road. The weather's not going to be great. We're supposed to get snow showers early, a little bit of wind. It can get cold in that stadium when you have some weather. If we get the snow as expected, that total will plummet. You'll end up getting a great number at 44.
All right, 44, he says. He likes the under. Faz, you agree with that total?
I'm going to pass.
What keeps you off it?
The Kansas City's got, as Matty said, they've got the best offense in the league the last 3 weeks, and so now we're going to play under 44.
And coincidentally, Andy Reid quit calling the plays 3 games ago. So to me, when I see just a random 3 games, I think low sample size, small sample, I'm not worried. But when something fundamentally changes, it still could be a small sample, but there's more reason to think that's the case. Like if you get headaches every day and you drink every day, and for 3 straight days you don't get a headache, but you quit drinking, maybe it's a coincidence, but it's more likely there's a correlation.
And don't you feel like in this game, it's kind of like saying, hey, I'm going to bet an over in Colorado or an over in San Francisco, and why is the line so different? It's because the stadium's different. The reason Kansas City has such hard splits is it's hard to throw the football in Kansas City. It's windy there. It gets cold at night. I mean, there's some real weather differentials, and we have 7 games at home, 7 away.
I don't think it's been windy or cold at night like in prior years. I think it's just this year. I think you're data mining too much for a small sample size of 7 games. I mean, I've got Kansas City being perfectly competent at home and better at home than on the road.
We're not talking about how good they are at home or road. We're talking about how good the offense is.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. In terms of their offense, and further, we talk about effort. Teams that are not playing for anything, and Miami's not playing for anything. They had their home run against New England. I could easily see.
But they just laid an egg. If we're going the zigzag, they just laid an egg last week, right?
Well, they lost by 8. They didn't lay an egg.
And it was a low-scoring game again.
So I could see a soft South Florida team.
What was the line in the Miami game last week?
4. Closed 4. 3.5 to 4.
All right. So they lost
by 4. They covered their teaser. I could see the soft. They all covered their teaser. The soft team from South Florida that's out of it goes to Arrowhead, and I could see them leaving their defense not giving full effort.
So on the side, you lean Kansas City.
Yes.
And I lean Kansas City too. I do actually think, I said this on the National Fox show, which by the way, guys, that's 11 o'clock Pacific Friday night to midnight, and then 10 o'clock Pacific Saturday night to midnight, obviously 3 hours later back east for the guys coming out of the bars. We love it. I personally think the Chiefs are playing better now than they did the first 5 games.
I just want to ask one question.
Yeah. I finally started my handicap.
If it's snowing that morning, as expected right now in the weather report, what's the total at kickoff?
As long as it's not windy, it doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, no one's going to bet the under when they see snow, because as a bookmaker, I don't see those lines drop.
People bet under, but they're wrong. That's why.
Yeah, because the line, I mean, if we're trying to get line move, that we could do a 2-hour podcast on this, right? Because some sharps believe, what is your closing line value? But the theory is some line moves are based on good information. Some line moves are public buys. But Matty, if you're saying, hey, if it snows, the line's going to get bet down, but I actually don't think it legitimately should, but I'll feel good that I have a 44 ticket when it's 42.5.
No, not 42.5, like 37.5.
Well, then if you're setting up a middle, then there's a ton of value.
Yeah, of course. Because you could buy off your ticket.
All right. This is all theoretical. I think Fez and I move towards even a like. I don't want to like it 10.5, but I lean Chiefs. Matty has his best bet on the under in this game. And you can see clearly that we don't just agree with each other's best bets. And by the way, pros versus Joes on Fezzik's best bet next. But first, this is a double like and a pros versus Joes and my best bet. But it's my best bet on the under in this game. So let me give that real quick, and then we can get in the side here because I think this is fascinating. The Rams, the Titans, and the Rams are favored by 6.5 on this game. It's a pros versus Joes. And let's do it first. We've got 100% of the account money, which is the sharps, on the Rams. So the Rams minus 6.5. 100% of the account money on the Rams. So the Rams is sharp. That's the pros. Faz, who do you like?
Like Tennessee.
Go ahead.
I have not bet it yet because I do believe.
already.
No, not true. I would bet 6.5 if the game was about to kick off, but I think I'm going to get 7. So I'm waiting on 7. Let me make my case.
With all the sharps on it, it's going to get to 7 at some point.
We'll see who the real big sharps bet later on in the week. The look-ahead line in this game was 3.25, meaning the Rams were -3, lay $1.20. What happened last week? Well, Tennessee met expectations. They went to San Francisco, lost by 2. They're getting 2. So they didn't do anything to change their draft status, if you will, in terms of power ratings. What the Rams do, they absolutely kicked butt in one of the hardest places to play in Seattle. We got to bump the Rams up. You want to bump the Rams up 3.5 points, you go right ahead. I mean, I gave them a nice bump up 1.5 in my power ratings. I still only have these teams 8 points apart. That would make this line 8 on a neutral. It'd make it 5.5 at Tennessee. Call it 5.5. But The key here is look at the intangibles. Yeah, don't go all the way to Seattle if you're the Rams. Now you're from LA. You got to fly out to bad weather in Tennessee and have a 10 a.m. start time. It is a terrible spot for the Rams.
I love the concept of Fez here with the idea that what was the look ahead, because especially when it's not about injury, because what is that? If someone gets injured, it's going to change the line if it's important. But the idea the Rams made a statement game. There's more people talking about the Rams after that Seattle game than probably the whole year combined almost. You know, maybe not that much, but really. And lo and behold, a Tennessee team loses the game, but they pushed in some places. So it was what was expected. So the idea of the line moving that much, it's all perception about the Rams. And if anything, isn't this potentially a letdown? So I agree with you. But let's be candid. Sharp so far on the Rams. Fez likes Tennessee. Matt, who do you like?
I like Tennessee as well.
All right, tell us why.
Again, if you went to the 2 weeks look ahead line, it was actually going to be a pick 'em in this game. And the fact that the Tennessee Titans lost to...
Now, do you guys put up lines 2 weeks ahead?
Well, that's when we make them for our risk guys.
Okay, so this wasn't
because it's a really good indicator, because we, outside of injuries, we don't want to allow ourselves, if there's no injuries, to say a team got too far worse in a 2 week period.
Okay, so you don't make these bettable, but you put internal numbers out.
Correct. I mean, we have weeks 2 through 16 up all year long, and this line was 9. Tennessee 9 to open the year preseason.
So you guys keep those lines up all year long?
No, but all summer long.
Oh, all summer long. Okay. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
And the other thing I like in this game is we always talk about teams that have bad losses because of turnovers but dominate the stats. Tennessee dominated the stats against Arizona but turned the ball over. Mariota threw the 2 interceptions in the second half, and they end up losing 12-7 in a game they're winning.
Okay, against Arizona.
Against Arizona. Okay. And I feel like this team has actually massively outperformed the stats, underperformed against the stats. While early in the year, they were outperforming the stats in terms of results. They were getting wins in games where they were losing the stats. Suddenly, they're losing games where they're winning the stats. I actually think there's a lot of value in this game at Tennessee.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to say I like it because we don't need Huey again, but I agree. By the way, the public's on the Rams, too. 92% of the tickets up at pregame.com on the Rams. So I think this baby getting a 7 seems very likely. All right, I have my best bet on the under in this game. Fez, what's the most recent number you've seen on this? 47.5, right? Okay, that's what I've got.
I think you can get a 48, but 47.5, yeah.
All right, so here's the rationale. I believe strongly the Rams' defense is better than their offense. If you look at the score, it looks like Goff just blew up and blah, 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 blah. But really, it was a bunch of short fields. I think the stat I heard is that every possession that the Rams scored on started in the Seattle's territory. Now, listen, you still scored. Give them credit. But it wasn't what that game seemed to be, or at least what the scoreboard seemed to be. And if you just look at yards per play, Faz, how does it go?
Rams actually, this is 1 week stale. Sorry for that. I've got 6 yards per play on offense, giving up 5.3. So the pure stats say the Rams are a little bit better on offense than they are good on defense.
Except if you look at Football Outsiders, which I trust more, and I haven't updated Football Outsiders. I'm sorry, I haven't updated Football Outsiders yet this week either. But, I mean, it was like best defense in the league a couple weeks ago and 10th best offense. So maybe it's gotten closer. But I think the public in general is going to say it's pure offense. Maybe it's break even or whatever.
That is the perception that they're a high-flying Rams team. And the beauty of your bet is that there's no question by anyone that the Tennessee Titans have an above-average defense, a very much above-average defense, but a very much below-average offense. So you got 4 sectors. You got 3 sectors that are all good for the under. The only concern is the Rams going crazy on offense, and that doesn't seem logical for a team from Los Angeles.
You always got to worry about that.
Yes,
right?
Going to Tennessee and frankly, a big road favorite. I always look towards the under. That's a good subset just in general.
Okay, so road favorite in the under too. All right, so which I hadn't ever thought of that really.
The Steelers, by the way, are like money for under when they're like more than a touchdown favorite on the road.
So to me, I think Tennessee is going to play their game, which is a conservative game. I think the Rams off a big win. Maybe there's a little bit, the energy's not there quite as much to have a fast-paced offense. Either way, at 47.5, I think we're looking at a mighty good bet. I like the under. You seem to agree, Faz. Matty, any thoughts on that? on the under in the my best bet Rams Titans.
Yeah, I like it. I would lean that way too. The only thing that made me a little nervous is that we opened 48 and it was 47.5, and I'm so concerned with numbers that sometimes when I can't get the best number, I'd rather pass than take a lesser one. So the fact that I could have got 48 and didn't a little angered me a little bit, but I liked 47.5 still under.
But 48 wasn't out there too much, was it?
It was the opener. It was out there for like Monday, Tuesday until the Wednesday, pounding start.
47 is more important than the 48, as are a lot of the odd numbers versus even numbers.
No, but I agree. But oh, go ahead. Tell me about odd versus even.
Well, 24-24, you go to overtime. So because of that, 48 doesn't land as much as 47.
That's pretty sad. Here we go. We could give them only in dreams, right? I think that, in fact, that one deserves it. Say that one more time.
Odd numbers are more prevalent than even numbers in all sports, even in football. Because
he gets that for that.
You can't go to overtime when the game in regulation ends on an odd number. If it lands 47, there will not be overtime.
I mean, that's why if you go to any of our prop sheets, we have prop sheets out for every single isolated game, and it's will the final score be odd, even, and odds always minus 135.
That's not true. I hate to correct the odds maker, but I went into CGT and I bet will the game end odd minus $1.25 on a recent primetime NFL game.
All right, that one dropped 10 cents, so someone bet it. But we opened them all standard 135.
Matty's so competitive, he's screaming over your dream feed. He's like, I turned it on to shut him up, and he's like screaming over it. All right.
I mean, I thought that was like standard intuitive knowledge.
So just to recap here, and then we've got Fez's best bet, which is a pros versus Joes, and then quickly we'll do the 2 Saturday games last, is we've got the pros on the Rams, Fezzik on Tennessee, Matty Holt on Tennessee, my best bet under 47.5. Okay, third best bet, it's Steve Fezzik. I'm going to do a little bit of, I'm going to hold it back. I'm going to do the reveal on this one. Falcons, Saints favored by 5.5. Fez, your best bet?
Best bet is on the Saints. I got to tell you, I'm a little worried because this is not a power rating play. I only have the Saints 2 points better than Atlanta. I do feel in New Orleans having a really good year that they're worthy of a 3.5-point home field advantage. That makes this line 5.5, which is right where it's at. But the Saints are going to absolutely take care of business here. It's one of my favorite things to do. Get the number one team in a division, a clear-cut number one team, facing a team that is not the number one team that beat them earlier in the year. Drew Brees threw an interception in the end zone to cost them the game at Atlanta just a few weeks earlier. And because of that, I think that revenge, which is largely vastly overrated in the NFL, is a big deal. When I got the better team and the better situation at home, New Orleans is off basically a sleepwalk game against the Jets. Atlanta, short work week, an all-in game. They needed to win again, not an all-in game, but they needed the win, and they had to play for 60 minutes against Tampa Bay. This has worked twice already in the NFC. The Vikings lost to Detroit, then they took care of business in the rematch, and then last week, I was on the Rams against Seattle. They lost the first game, took care of business big time. In the second game, I think the same thing happens here. Saints by 10 points.
Okay, let's get the smart money. Smart money says 90% of the professional money is against Fez on the Falcons. So Fez is with? Wow, what do you think of the side? I know you like the total here, Matty, but what do you think of the side?
I was leaning ever so slightly toward Atlanta. I thought the sleepwalking on Monday night was partially due to the look-ahead spot where they knew this was the biggest game of their season right now. If they were going to have any shot at winning the NFC South, and then they were going to have to win this game. So the fact that they sleptwalked through, Matt Ryan didn't have laser focus against Tampa Bay wasn't a big surprise. They were missing Tevin Coleman as well. I think Vic Beasley's back. He's 100%. He looked really strong last week. I think this is because these two teams both would actually prefer to run the ball with a total so high, 53.5, in a game that means so much where you're not going to want to make mistakes. I lean toward the under here. I didn't have a strong opinion on the side. Gun to head, I guess I take the points. It's such a big game.
I'll tell you this. I personally actually like the Falcons here. I mean, I haven't thought about the game. So, Fez, just one more time. Why? Because let's give Atlanta 4 for home, right? Because they're motivated.
4 for home.
All right.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Saints 4 for home.
That's a big home field advantage down there. It's
I
loud
agree,
when that place
especially when they're winning and it's a big game.
Agreed.
So my question is, how much better on the neutral are the Saints?
2 points better.
All right, so that gets to 6. So why are you laying 110 at 5.5?
Because I got a huge emotional edge here.
Which is a must-win for Atlanta, right?
For both.
No, Atlanta can lose this game. They win to Carolina. They're in the playoffs.
Yeah, but you can't
You
can't lose this game and win this division.
That's correct. But
So
they
there's
can
no
still make the
motivation
playoffs.
edge.
Atlanta had the motivation edge 2 weeks ago when they played. Atlanta was facing the abyss.
Well, I don't care about that. I'm talking about right now. Who has the
but it's
motivation
critical.
edge?
We go back to 2 weeks ago,
Why?
RJ, because in that game I said New Orleans doesn't need this game at all. Atlanta needs the game like blood. I bet Atlanta, and I actually said I'm betting big on Atlanta. They're going to find a way to win this game, and then I'm going to bet against them in 2 weeks when they go back to the Dome.
But
with
that would
recent
assume
revenge.
there'd be only 2 reasons to do what you said, and they're both good. I'm just not sure either of them apply here. One will be if cause the public saw Atlanta win, and they're not accounting for it was a motivational flat spot for the Saints in that game, then now this line gets cheap. But I don't think 5.5 is cheap. Right? So that one seems to be gone. You agree with that?
I agree with that.
And the other reason would be, oh, well, there's revenge, in-season revenge. But once you get to 10 motivationally, you can't get past 10. So if both these teams are playing max hard, how does the in-season revenge matter?
Because the Saints weren't playing max hard. They were a 16-point favorite.
They weren't in that game, but they're going to play max hard in this game.
No, but last week they played the Jets, and they were the team that absolutely sleepwalked through that entire game. I'll argue they had a bye week almost.
Okay. And
Atlanta needed to beat Tampa Bay on Monday night.
They needed to beat them, and so the Saints needed to win too. And they were both fairly easy games.
Atlanta wasn't an easy
so
game.
So this is all about it's all about fatigue then.
It's all about fatigue, the mental and
but
physical
that's not
the
what
last
you said.
2 weeks.
What you said wasn't all about fatigue. So now let's zero into this. You think it's just Atlanta's a little more tired?
Yes, physically and mentally.
Okay, I can accept that. I'm not sure it's a best bet, but all this motivation stuff, you can't get past 10.
And I really think the Saints should have won in Atlanta. They were in position to win that game and breeze through an interception he never throws in the end zone with them in position to win that game 2 weeks ago.
All right, Matty, and you lean on the under there. Okay, we got 2 Saturday games. We're going to go through those last and quick. By the way, guys, last week, and again, thank you so much for all the help. We did have a flat week. So, and I typically, because it'd be Christmas and all, would be giving you something anyways. But guys, we actually do a massive amount of Christmas promotions, that giveaways, I guess you would call it, up at pregame.com with the buy pick stuff. So check your email. If you've ever bought anything, you will be getting bombarded with offers by email, not bombarded, a couple. And it's literally things like free $10 here. It's not like little small things. These are really like giveaways. Check that out. And next week, hopefully we'll be back with our special uptick coupon. And the way that happens, guys, clearly is when you spread the word. And I would say I've seen more on Twitter of people telling their buddies, and this is actually interesting, is with their buddies where they'll say things like, like, hey, so-and-so, someone they follow on or they know on Twitter, check out this pod. So yeah, we love it if you retweet and stuff. But even if you just tell one friend about it on Twitter, it helps. One listener at a time is how we've gotten here, and we so appreciate it. And like we said, pregame.com, check your email. A lot of very, very good giveaways for the holiday season. Matty, you're out of town next week. Now, a lot of people would say, wait a minute, Matt Holt missed like a couple, 3-4 weeks in a row, and you guys kept growing. And the week that you came back, he came back was the flat week. Do you think there's any connection?
It could be, man. I mean,
and here's what I say about travel and all that about missing the dream preview.
I tell you, folks, it's harder than it looks. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
So when you're vacationing or whatever you're doing next week, we'll be here. If you want to call and say hi.
All right.
2 Saturday games. He looks a little peeved. Are you a little peeved? You want to you want to speak your mind?
No.
Vikings, Packers. We've got the Vikings favored by 9 in this game. It's a Saturday. Matty, you lean Green Bay.
Yeah, I just think the overreaction to Aaron Rodgers here might be a little too much. And if you tell me that the overreaction is motivation and Aaron Rodgers and that Green Bay is going to give up, I might be able to buy into it. But the Packers hate the Vikings. Who knocked Aaron Rodgers out? The Vikings. I think Green Bay will be plenty motivated here. Brett Hundley improved throughout his start, so we're getting a better Brett Hundley than we got the first game after he took over for Aaron Rodgers. I don't see any reason why they have to get blown out here. I would lean to the 9 points in Green Bay.
Yeah, I just worry about motivation. I think Hundley, you're right, but boy, isn't this the ultimate dream crusher? You wait all that time for Rodgers coming back, and then he won game and he's gone, and now it's like, what are you playing for now? This feels like the ultimate dream crusher, Fez.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it's not going to be the dream crusher because I think the fans in Green Bay are so loyal. The stadium's not going to be half empty. It's going to be 8 degrees there.
I'm talking about the players.
The players are going to see the fans, and they're going to want to play hard for the fans. And I think Matty nailed it. If you look at Hundley, they were playing the Saints the first game he started. Saints and Minnesota, pretty comparable teams, and Green Bay was getting 4. Now they're getting 9 against the Minnesota Viking team. And get this, RJ, energy-wise, Vikings' 4th road game, the last 5 playing at 8 degrees. That is most certainly not a good spot for the Vikings.
Now, you've got your derivative bet on this one.
I do. I'm going to play longest field goal to go under what I expect to be 45 yards. The reason being, I got to tell you, this is a basic strategy play. Whenever the temperature drops below 15 degrees, the physics, it just doesn't travel as far. But what I really like about this is McCarthy, when he played your Steelers, attempted a 57-yard field goal against Pittsburgh, and he got blasted by the media. What are you doing? And because of that, if there's ever a close call, should I punt? Should I try the field goal? I believe because of that game and the bad weather conditions here, he'll choose to punt.
So, Matty, you guys, do you think when you put up those opening numbers, are you thinking about the weather on the field goal length, or do you just take a couple of cracks because the limits aren't that high and let the better shaping it up?
So despite the fact that we rarely put that prop up in town. I mean, we put a lot up, more than anyone else in town for isolated football games, and we have a prop sheet up for this game, and it may include team to kick the longest field goal, but we don't put a number up in these games.
Saturday, last game, 16 we did, baby. Colts, Ravens, it's a public pounder. We've got a ton of Ravens action, as you might guess. Fez, no, let's start with Matty here. Matty, you lean Baltimore.
Yeah, and look, I hate the idea of laying double digits in the NFL, especially 13, almost 2 touchdowns. But if there's a team that not only has no motivation in this, the Indianapolis Colts, but you also have a team here who's 32nd in the league, dead last in the league in offense. This team just can't score. So that it becomes a situation where Baltimore might not have to score 30-plus points to cover this number, because if Indy doesn't score, they could win 14-0 and cover. I think that makes it a little more easier to be able to lean toward the favorite at least.
All right, minus 13. That's a big number. He leans that way, though. Fez?
I'm going to lean towards the dog. Shocker, I lean towards the plus 13.5. Worried about the spot for Baltimore. Divisional sandwich at Pittsburgh, at Cleveland. I know it's Cleveland. It's still a divisional game, and they got the Bengals in the final week. I could easily see this game against Indy to be similar to the New Orleans game against the Jets, where they're going to say, hey, we're going to win this game, and sleepwalk through the entire game. As far as Indy, on the look-ahead line, they're getting 10. Now they're getting 13.5. Again, all these favorites are getting inflated because they've covered so much since week 7. And Indy, it's not a bad spot for them at all. They played Denver on Thursday. They've had 9 days off. This game's on Saturday, so they have a big rest advantage for the road team on Saturday. You never see that. And Indy got crushed by Denver, got embarrassed on national TV. So their last national TV game to go ahead and show up like Tampa did, like the Miami Dolphins did, solid value. And hey, they can get blown out like they did when they lost to Denver, lose by 12, still cover.
How much does Fez love this? He's almost 2 hours in, and he's squeezing in like 8 points on the last game. Matty's taking off his headphones. Guys, the Dream Preview College Edition was really great this week. We're doing the middle 15 bowl games, 23rd through the 28th. Check that out on my Twitter, @RJ in Vegas. Matty, he'll be on vacation. Fez and I, maybe a mystery guest, back next week. It'll be Thursday release for the NFL as usual next week. Have a happy holidays. Talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Catch the Wiseguy Roundtable each week. College football released on Wednesday, NFL on Thursday. Don't miss any winners. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Visit podcastone.com and download the Podcast One app. Have a question for RJ? You can contact him directly on Twitter @RJ in Vegas. Live the dream with us each week.
Hey, it's Jay Moore, and it is time for America's Lakers podcast. That's right, I'm going to be hosting America's Lakers podcast. My man Aaron Larsoul, an analytical genius, he's going to bring to the table what I can't every Wednesday.
Aaron. Yes. This is the official podcast of the Los Angeles Lakers.
We are, and as the analytics expert on this podcast, I want to actually give you some props, Jay, because you were interrupting me at 42% of all sentences, and you're down to 34. What would you attribute this reduction to?
I'm down to what now?
34%.
35. I interrupted you again. There's the gold standard and the purple and gold standard.
America's Lakers podcast with me, Jay Moore, and my man, my brother, Aaron Larsoul, every Wednesday. Podcast1.com.
New York, you know you're number one. So this holiday season, give your loved ones the best. Verizon Unlimited with 4 lines for $40 per line per month. When you've got New York's #1 network, there's nothing you can't do. Share unlimited photos and videos, send unlimited texts, and make unlimited calls with mobile hotspot and 4G LTE data in all 5 boroughs. Enjoy the best unlimited for a great price, because this first-class city doesn't do second-rate gifts. New York, give your friends and family the best. Verizon Unlimited.